Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, July 18th, 2020, and today I'm going to be talking about why the GOP should be very worried about the outcome of the 2020 general election. So I know a lot of the times I talk about Joe Biden being ahead of Donald Trump and the Democrats having an advantage in the United States Senate, but as we move past 2020, the Republican Party is going to probably be at an even worse state than they are right now. The Democratic Party probably will retain every single governor election that they currently have held up through 2020, except for maybe Montana, which is the only competitive race, which means as we go into 2020 following the 2020 census, there will be way more Democrats than there have been in the past for redistricting, which means gerrymandering will come as a default and will ultimately benefit both parties, but now it's going to be about equal, except for some states where the state legislature might temper the overall redistricting efforts. Besides that, taking a look at the results, the United States Senate might actually be not in play for the Republican Party in 2022. Even if Joe Biden is the incumbent president, the House may be, but the Senate probably not. Looking at where we stand for the United States Senate elections, as much as Joe Biden has, I guess, when Joe Biden has a very strong lead over Donald Trump, the Senate tilts in favor of the Democratic Party. Taking a look at who's the projected winner of the overall majority, the JHK forecast currently gives the Democrats a 56% chance at winning the majority. Keep in mind that would require them to flip very solid Republican states and become competitive in many others. States such as Georgia or Montana or, Iowa, North Carolina, Arizona, Kansas. States that have Montana, not Montana, yes, Montana, but Maine. States that have, Republican incumbents that have since been either solid for the Democratic Party now, or will be, it's just very surprising seeing the Republican incumbents that were super popular 4 years ago or had a much better reelection chance 4 years ago than they do right now. So when we look at the 2016 Senate map, I don't have it up on the screen right now because it's just going to be a small point that I'm making here. But in 2016, the Democratic Party gained 2 Senate seats. That was from the states of, I believe, Illinois and New Hampshire. They gained 2 Senate seats. But pretty much, it was a net gain of 2. They didn't really dominate in the House. They only picked up 6 seats. It wasn't nearly enough to flip back the majority. But the Democratic Party seems to be on track. And even if they do win 50 seats to 50 seats and Joe Biden's vice president breaks the tie, looking at the 2022 Senate map, I don't think the Republican Party's chances are that much better. So if we look over in 2022, let's go ahead and get to the Senate elections. Let's look at this map. So if we look at the 2022 Senate map, let's talk about some of these states. Sure, the Republican Party could make plays for Colorado, could make plays for Nevada, could for New Hampshire. But if we look at the states that Joe Biden is projected to carry, and also that our Democratic Party seems to be gaining in terms of support, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa, Florida, possibly Alaska. If we look at, Lisa Murkowski probably won't be a Republican incumbent by this time, but looking at the states that could be competitive for the Democratic Party, it definitely outweighs the states that the Republican Party might have a pickup in. I really don't see Mark Kelly losing. I don't see, the Democrats losing any of the states that they carry in 2020, in the 2022 Senate elections, with maybe the exception of Nevada and New Hampshire. Honestly, think Colorado has gone too far left. And even if they do lose those 2 Senate seats, they're not as bad as at a point. They're not as bad as they are right now. They're currently at 47 seats. That would only knock them down to 48, assuming that the forecast is correct. And honestly, I think the Democrats might actually outperform that forecast. And even in that scenario, that would require Republicans to hold on to Wisconsin with a retiring incumbent who actually is pretty tricky about whether or not he's actually retiring. Pennsylvania, they would have to retain. They would have to retain Ohio, Iowa, Georgia, likely, Florida, North Carolina. So it may not be the most difficult task considering they have in the past, but I will say that the Republican Party did gain seats in 2018 despite it being a Democratic wave year. I understand they were in very favorable seats, and there actually are some pretty favorable races for the Democrats then. So looking past the Senate, let's take a look at the House of Representatives. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the overall House elections and discuss what we could likely see following 2020. So the Democratic Party, though they had a very large majority following the 2008 presidential election, lost it in 2010. That very well could happen to the Democrats following this election. But the redistricting efforts likely will favor the Democratic Party. We also have to realize that the Democratic Party probably has a lot more support than they did in 2010. Yes, they brought a turnout in 2008, and it may not have been too high in 2010 by any means. The numbers there, I think it was 33% turnout nationwide. In 2022, we can almost guarantee a lot more people are going to vote. The Democratic Party did something that the Republican Party did not do in any midterm election, and that is rival presidential election turnout. In the 2018 midterm elections, we saw the most votes ever cast in a midterm election in United States history. So 2018, it was a Democratic wave year, and the Democrats drove up turnout. When it was a Republican wave year in 2014 and 2010, if anything, they drove down turnout. It was not a Republican wave year because turnout was increasing. It was because Democrats didn't vote, because they weren't inspired to vote. They had no reason to. Now, looking at 2022, Democrats really could maybe not use the anti-Trump sentiment, but take anti-Republican sentiment and actually be mildly competitive. I think the House is the only vulnerable part for the Democrats. If they win the Senate in 2020, I think that they will likely retain it following 2022. But the House is generally always in play in every midterm election year, but it's going to be pretty difficult for the GOP to say the least. 2010 did not come easy for the Republicans. A lot of effort went into that going down there. So also 2020, the regular general election, the Republican Party has nothing to look good for, to look forward to. Donald Trump currently has a 56% disapprove rating amongst Americans and a 40% approval rating. That's horrible. That's a negative 16 nationwide. I mean, at this point, just a couple of months ago, Trump was, sure, underwater by 5%, but that was a winnable margin. The Economist even rated Donald Trump likely to win the election during the time that he was only underwater by 5%, because Trump has always been disapproved of, but never by this much, except for maybe this small blip back in February 2019 during, this pretty consistent period of time in late 2017 when Trump was probably at his lowest point. But he should not be entering into his reelection at his lowest point. He should not be at the same numbers when America disliked him the most, entering in to November, entering in to a race against Joe Biden. Looking at the national average, not only is Trump's approval rating at 40%, he's only getting 41% of the vote. So only around 1% of those who may disapprove of him are actually voting for him. So he's only holding on to that solid 40% base, but it is possible that it does dip down. We've seen recent data that shows that Donald Trump's approval rating has dipped down below 40%. Biden has kept this lead pretty consistently, to be completely honest. His lead went from 4% to 5% to 6%, but never really jumped up until around June, when it started jumping up pretty rapidly. Donald Trump was underwater by Joe Biden by around 10% back in late June. Then it happened again in early July. But now, we're mid-July, and Biden is still ahead by 9.1%, or 9%, sorry, by the national average. So the presidential election, they have nothing to look forward to. The 2020 Senate election probably will go to the GOP given the rating right now. And let's talk about the possibility of a GOP pickup. I talked about them possibly picking it up in 2022, but let's take a look at 2020. Based off the JHK forecast, the Republicans have a 2.9% chance at winning the United States House of Representatives. The Democrats have 97.1% of a chance to retain their House majority. Looking at the plural vote as well, they have a model for the general election, but let's take a look at their, I don't know if they have, I know they have a House election, but I want to see the forecast for it. Let's go ahead and see. Maybe I won't be able to find it, but I thought I would be able to. I know they have a House forecast, but I guess I don't have it up. I don't know why, and I hate. Okay, so first of all, besides that, do any of you guys know how to fix this issue where if I, go too far down, it'll just follow my cursor? I don't know really how to fix something like that where it'll just follow it regardless of where I go on the screen. But whatever, it doesn't really matter because I could definitely go ahead and try to figure out a way to fix it. But their Senate map doesn't look any more favorable for the GOP. Really, than the one from JHK. And then we look at the Economist forecast for the presidential election. Again, absolutely nothing to look forward to. So the GOP probably will be at a very horrible position following the 2020 election. Donald Trump has pretty much rewrote the entire Republican Party to a point where the Democratic Party is entering into a presidential election year with midterm energy. And the problem with that is that it never happened in 2016. That didn't happen in 2010. I mean, it was okay in 2008. Yes, they had a lot of energy in the later part of the campaign because of Obama, but at this point in time, Obama was not leading McCain by this large of a margin. Okay, Obama was only leading McCain by around 5% 8 years ago. Or sorry, 12 years ago. I can't believe I said 8 years ago. 12 years ago, Obama was only leading McCain by around 5% at this time. So Biden is at a better point than President Obama did in his landslide election in 2008. The Democrats are at a better point in the House of Representatives than where they were in 2008. Looking at the seats that the Democrats carried in 2008, they were in very Republican districts. They just had Democratic incumbents that were popular. That's not happening this time around. Democrats have turned districts blue. Back then, they were just winning in red districts. Now, they don't need those red districts. They're winning in bluer districts that used to be red. And they've changed them, not only now, but probably for future elections. And looking at the Senate map, it doesn't look too favorable for the GOP. I can only imagine if Trump wins this election, those 2022 midterms will absolutely be a bloodbath for the GOP. So Trump isn't going to win, probably, at this point. He has a 7% chance, according to The Economist. And if you take a look at the JHK forecast, he has around a 14% chance. And you go ahead and take a look at the plural vote as well. And Trump has a 22.95% chance. That actually is a little bit better than JHK and a lot better than The Economist, but still only getting 194 electoral votes. So Donald Trump seems to be underwater. The United States Senate doesn't seem to be good for the GOP, considering that they're working with a very favorable map. There is nothing that's indicating that they could possibly flip seats. In fact, they're probably going to lose the majority. I don't think they're going to flip any seat except for Alabama. At this point in time, New Hampshire has become safe. New Mexico has become safe. Virginia has become safe. Michigan has. Illinois has. Minnesota. All states that Republicans might have targeted if Hillary Clinton was the incumbent, but she's not. So now the Republicans are defending on their home turf of Montana, Kansas, Texas, Arizona, Georgia special election, North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, Iowa, states that Donald Trump carried back in 2016 that now look like the Democrats have a realistic shot at winning or are already the favorites. For example, Colorado, which didn't go to Donald Trump but has a Republican incumbent, or Arizona, where the Democrats have an 80% chance at winning in this state. So the Senate seems to be gone, and the House even more gone. So the Republican Party has nothing. They will have no silver lining following the 2020 election, except for maybe a Donald Trump re-election. But that means the 2022 midterms are going to be a lot worse than what 2018 were. What 2018 was for the GOP. Because if we look at the energy going into this election, Joe Biden probably won't lose. The Democrats will probably win back the Senate. And the Democrats will absolutely retain the House, regardless of who's president. So as they go into 2022, the House may be competitive for the GOP, but the Senate map doesn't look really favorable whatsoever. And obviously the next presidential election will be 2024. So the GOP has a lot to worry about. They're going to have to do damage control for Donald Trump, for these Republican candidates endorsed by Donald Trump that have Donald Trump tendencies. And once Trump is out, the GOP likely will shift itself in favor, back in favor of those Republican nominees like Mitt Romney or John McCain or even George Bush, which means a lot of those Trump-loving Republicans that will be probably winning House seats, considering that they have won their primaries, assuming they've won their primaries or Senate seats, they will probably fall out of popularity amongst the Republican Party and obviously amongst Democrats and independents, which will make those races competitive. Because once Trump is out of the White House, anyone who mimics him or identifies as a Trump Republican, they're probably going to be voted out next. So Donald Trump is on the pathway to losing. The Republicans have numerous Senate seats that don't look like they're going to end up going to the GOP, even though they were widely expected to just a year ago. The House is no longer even remotely competitive, a 3% chance at winning it back. The GOP is at a very low point right now, and as we progress through this election, it doesn't look like it's getting any better. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. The handles are on the bottom left of the screen. Go ahead and check out the video on your screen and then a playlist for my 2020 election videos. There should be around 200 in there. I'm just discussing the 2020 election. And again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.